Dear BalkanPod listener, today we will talk about Chinese influence in the Balkans with a precious expert from Belgrade, Stefan Vladisavljev, whose name is very difficult to pronounce, but I'm trying. Dear Stefan, welcome to my pod.
Hi Dilek. Thank you for having me. It's really an honor to participate, and I hope that our discussion will be interesting for your listeners and that they will find a little bit more about Chinese presence in the Western Balkans and especially in Serbia, where I am from. And I have to say that as a foreigner, as someone who is not from Serbia, saying my last name was actually one of the better interpretations that I have heard so far, because I have heard a lot worse pronunciation of my last name than yours was.
Thank you very much for your nice comment to my pronunciation. Okay, Stefan, first of all, I really want to thank you for accepting my invitation. And secondly, I want to introduce you briefly, if you allow me. Dear Vladisavljev, the program coordinator at the Belgrade Fund for Political Excellence, and he is a member of the organization team of the Belgrade Security Forum, and he is mostly focusing on cooperation between China and Western Balkans, and also he wrote and published several important articles that deal with this topic. So, my first question will be about Chinese presence in the Western Balkans. Actually, how has China increased its presence in the Western Balkans? When did it start and quickly become strong in the region?
Yeah, that is actually something that it is a really good starting point. When we are talking about Western Balkans and when we are talking about foreign influences in the Western Balkans, usually the first actor that comes in mind is European Union, because the whole region tends to become a part of the European Union. Then for the longest period of time, when we were looking at the East, the other important actor that's not China was Russia. Russia was perceived as a traditional actor in the Western Balkans. Then we had influences coming from USA. Even Turkey was perceived as a foreign influence in some capacity, especially in some countries. But China was not an actor that was really active here and has not established a lot of relationship with Western Balkan countries until recently. And when we are speaking about Chinese presence, we can say that even though there are some historical connections, for example, the heritage of communism as a socio-political order, or even some support to Serbia, actually then to Yugoslavia during the NATO intervention in 1999. But really, China became important actor, let's say, back in 2009. And we can pinpoint that here actually because in 2009, the first important strategic agreement was signed between Serbia and China. Since 2009, China has increased presence and has established cooperation with most of the Western Balkans countries, but Serbia is leading the way. Serbia is actually the most important partner of China in the Western Balkans, and in the last 11 years has become a reliable partner. It's not only economic cooperation, now we are seeing more and more political cooperation, and we can say that it is almost comprehensive partnership between Serbia and China. With other countries, it's not that developed. For example, China has not established diplomatic relations with Kosovo at all. So China and Kosovo are not cooperating. Other countries like Bosnia and Herzegovina, Montenegro, even Albania, in some capacity North Macedonia, have established cooperation with China. So China is present. China is establishing cooperation with Western Balkan countries on several levels. As I mentioned, Serbia is leading the way, but all of the Western Balkan countries except Kosovo are also part of the 17+1 framework cooperation platform, actually, that manages to gather 17 Central and Eastern European countries in one platform that's been establishing as a cooperating mechanism with China. Of course, we have to mention the Chinese Strategic Belt and Road Initiative, a strategic foreign policy initiative. So yeah, that's the short story of how China came to be present in the last 10, 11 years in the Western Balkans, and how China has positioned itself as an important actor in the region.
Okay, you mentioned that actually Serbia is a very important partner for China. I remember that during the Chinese help provided to Serbia in the fight against coronavirus, I saw some picture of several billboards in Belgrade with the message "Hvala ti, brate Xi." It's mean like "Thank you, brother Xi." These photos suddenly have become symbols of Serbia and China relation. How you can explain this? Why cooperation with other countries in the Balkans has not been developed like Serbia?
Well, actually, that's the two-part answer, in my opinion. The first one is regarding the billboards, the "Thank you, Brother Xi" signs across Belgrade, and the second one is why the cooperation with the other countries is not that developed. So if we focus on a minute on the COVID-19 situation and COVID-19 help, China helped other countries in the region in some capacity also. Why? Because help sent to Serbia was part, and other Western Balkan countries, was part of the Chinese mask diplomacy, so-called mask diplomacy. Basically, China was the first country to get out of the first wave of COVID-19 because it was the first country to got COVID-19 back in, let's say, January. But there are some examples of the virus even before that. But in February, China already started to move outside its own territory and started to act globally. And basically, that whole effort of Chinese outreach during COVID-19 crisis was named mask diplomacy. And the difference is how that mask diplomacy was received from country to country. So almost each and every European country received some level of help from China. China even sent help to USA. So basically, they were making a global effort. But for example, that was better received in some countries like Serbia. In Serbia, China was put first and foremost as a main partner into the fight against COVID-19. And that was something that was even done with harming European Union and harming a picture of European solidarity. There was a famous press conference by President Vučić, Serbian President Vučić, when he said that European solidarity doesn't exist and that we can only count on China to help us. So basically, that was parallel process of Chinese global effort and then the promotion of Chinese presence here in Serbia, if we are focusing on Serbia right now. So basically, Serbian government, Serbian officials shifted gears, put it in the higher gear and promoted Chinese presence like crazy. We had billboards, we had press conferences, we had Chinese flag kissing when first airplane with the donation from China came. But even now, 6 months after that, we do not know what has actually China donated to Serbia and what has been purchased because that was marked as a highly confidential document and that was marked as a secret document. They are not giving that information to Serbia, to Serbian citizens actually, because there is a doubt that the majority of the equipment came to Serbia from China was not a donation, that it was actually purchased from China. And we do not know what has been donated and what has been marked as help and what has been purchased, so basically spending the funds of Serbian citizens in Serbian budget. So even 6 months after, we do not know. Maybe it was 100% donation. Either way, we do not know. So that is why we saw billboards and that kind of promotion during the COVID-19 crisis. That said, in other countries, in other Western Balkan countries, there was some level of Chinese promotion, either from the Chinese companies or even directly from the Chinese state, Chinese embassy, etc., etc. But what has been obvious is that the level of promotion and the level of putting China in the first place was not the same in those countries like it was in Serbia. And we can explain that by looking back in past couple of years where China has been shown as an important foreign policy factor for Serbia, important partner in the field of international relations, while other countries have not done that. For example, Montenegro has clearly positioned itself as a country who has become a member of NATO recently, as well as Macedonia, North Macedonia, a country that has opened all of the chapters of EU negotiation process. Same goes to Albania. Albania has shown European perspective, has not established so close relationship with China. Bosnia and Herzegovina is a story for itself. For example, Republika Srpska has been more eager to establish some kind of cooperation with China. So we have seen provinces to provinces cooperation, sister city agreements, bilateral visits from the officials of Republika Srpska, including the member of presidency, Milorad Dodik. In federation, it's not like that. In federation, that's the other part of Bosnia and Herzegovina. China has not been positioned as that important foreign policy factor, but that's the story for Bosnia and Herzegovina itself. Kosovo, as a country that has not been recognized by Serbia, has not established diplomatic relationship with China. Of course, there is a portion of that is due to the close political relationship between China and Serbia, established in the past 10, 11 years. But of course, there is that Chinese interest because China has a lot of territorial disputes by itself. Either we are talking about South China Sea or even Tibet or some other territorial disputes that China has. It was not in their interest to recognize Kosovo as an independent country and to establish diplomatic relationship between Kosovo and China. So it is an overview of why we can say that Serbia has promoted China in that sense, in that way, in that capacity, and why some other countries have not done that.
You described this COVID-19 period as a mask diplomacy in your speech. Actually, I really didn't understand this term. What is exactly this? Is it a humiliating phrase or glorifying phrase?
Well, it's description first and foremost, and it's not something that was my invention when China started to make that outreach outside of the China. So basically, China first and foremost fought against COVID on its own territory. That was January and February. Yeah, during that period, they have tried to fabricate some numbers. They have closed Hebei province. That's the Wuhan city was totally under closure. We have seen pictures coming from China, and China was battling COVID on its own territory. When they put COVID under certain level of control in February, in March, they have started to act globally. So basically, we have seen numerous reports of Chinese donations in protective gear, including protective masks. So basically, masks that have been worn in the majority part of the world as a mean to fight COVID-19 outbreak. So that is the reason why they have called that mask diplomacy. It was diplomatic foreign policy effort made by the Chinese state to position itself as a main fighter against COVID-19, not only in China, but globally. And they have started to send and to ship numerous contingents of protective gear, protective masks, protective gloves, etc., to the different countries across the world. And that effort was described as a mass diplomacy effort. So basically, that is the process of China positioning itself as a main fighter against COVID-19 globally at the beginning of the global outbreak back in February and in March.
And also you mentioned that European solidarity is that, as Vučić stated a few months ago. Do you think that COVID-19 crisis tarnished the EU's image in the Western Balkans?
I am big proponent of the European integration of the Western Balkans. And I am someone who is always saying that the future of the Western Balkans is as a part of European Union. So in my opinion, stating that European solidarity is not something that should be said because it's basically untrue. What did happen, and where I can understand the statement given the certain context, as I mentioned, China was the first one to have COVID-19 as a problem inside its own borders. And China was the first one to make the effort globally. COVID-19 came a little bit later to the Europe and came a little bit later to the USA. Until this day today, USA is fighting COVID inside its own borders and has not made any efforts outside its own borders to position itself as a global actor. And European Union has not done that. European Union has made outreach outside of its own border. But European Union, being the European Union, was really slow in the beginning because they have acted poorly at the start. When I'm saying they have acted poorly, that basically means that first, each of the European Union countries fight by itself, and first couple of weeks, because European Union is slow and they need some time to start. But when they have started to do things in the fight against COVID-19, they have consolidated their own countries. 27 member countries have consolidated first. And after that, they have made the outreach. Even after a couple of months after that statement that European solidarity has been dead, Vučić has let's say, corrected itself, stating that yes, European Union is the biggest partner of Serbia in the fight against COVID-19. If we are talking about financial donations, long-term programs of help, there are announced solidarity funds, there are announced financial funds coming to the Western Balkans. They cannot be compared to the funds received from any other country. So at that point, when he stated that European solidarity is dead,